It's that moment again, the one you dream of every night. La seule chose qui te préoccupe, c'est la gloire. Le cheminement de la réussite, of pushing yourself further than ever before. But the true glory is in the shadows. Les sacrifices que tu fais, quand toutes les chances sont contre toi. When you can't push one more second, chase the glory. Visez haut.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Youth Sports Conversation featuring this month is Black History Month. So we have a lot of special guests with us tonight, and I'm really excited to have, honestly, a raw, honest conversation to speak our truth tonight and just be, and don't censor, no censoring allowed. Obviously, stay professional, but we're not going to be censoring this conversation as this is a very much needed discussion around the league. And I think we have a great mix of people now. I'm Savannah Hamilton. I will be your host tonight. I work with the Toronto Raptors as a producer and a host and a sideline reporter for the Raptors 905. But most importantly, I consider myself a storyteller. And what I pride myself the most on is telling stories that make a difference, that create impact. Now, enough about me. I wanted to talk about our guests and just get right on into our introductions. So starting off with Tyra Blizzard. She's a 2020 graduate, Ottawa GG women's basketball team member. Donovan Bennett as well. We have Sportsnet personality and former running back with the Western Mustangs football team. I'm looking forward to exploring that conversation a little bit, Donovan. And we have Leanna Osei. She's a head coach from Santa Fe, women's basketball, founder of the Black Canadian Coaches Association. Great woman. I've known her for a long time as we go back in the basketball world. And Tyrell Lang, who's a fifth-year guard with UNBC Timberwolves men's basketball player. He's actually currently still a member of youth sports in his fifth year. And of course, we have Krishanda Green, aka Crash. She's really well known in the hockey world. We'll get into her roots in a bit. But Green, she's a 2020 graduate and a team captain of the Ryerson Rams hockey team. Shout out to the Rams. We also have Bowie Same, sorry for the mispronunciation if I did that, former soccer player on Team Canada, U17 and Brock Badgers, men's soccer player, now marketing coordinator at the 2022 Niagara Canada Summer Games. Charles Kissy, spent way too much time with this man over the past couple of weeks as we have some shows together. Now, he is a head coach and a GM of the Guelph Nighthawks, a former police officer, and the founder of Equity Connection. So very much looking forward to picking his brain on, the relationships with the police in regards to systemic racism as well that he sees in the corporate side of things. And of course, we have Tanisha Gittins, who is the head coach of the Concordia Stingers women's basketball team. I've heard a lot about her and her coaching staff. And of course, to wrap it up, we also have Dr. Ivan Joseph, Vice President of Student Affairs from Wilfrid Laurier University, which still feels weird because he used to be at Ryerson when I was there. And finally, we have the man of the hour, the man that brought this event together, wrapping up the night, represented from Youth Sports, Mohammed Hassan, Manager of Marketing at Youth Sports. So thank you guys for tuning in. I want you to just jump right on in. We have an amazing group. And I'm excited to speak with them all. First up, we have Tyra Blizzard. Hey, Tyra.
Hi, Savannah. How are you?
I'm great. Now, I think I just spoke to you just before this, and I said I went on a TikTok rampage on your page. I was literally like scrolling and watching TikToks for an hour straight. What has been your experience? Because you're a basketball player as well at the University of Ottawa, and we used to play the GGs and it was a competitive team. As a Ryerson Ram athlete, former athlete myself, what has your experience been as an Ottawa GG?
Honestly, it's been amazing. I started off playing 4 years at the University of Windsor, and I transferred and I finished my last year at U Ottawa. And I was just so grateful for, number one, the chance to play and finish off at the school that my mom finished at and rep her number. And we got the chance to go to Italy and play some NCAA teams. So it was a great way to finish off in my hometown. So yeah, shout out U Ottawa.
Honestly, that's awesome. And dive into your social media. You're so outspoken, and sometimes I think that I'm outspoken on social, but then you just take it to a whole nother level. You rip the lid off of it. You call out racism. You call out homophobia, transphobia. Why are you so how are you so vocal? And what advice would you give to somebody hoping to use their platform for the same cause?
Well, I feel like I'm just tired of being silenced, honestly. And it took me a while to kind of find the confidence to find my voice. And I kind of realized that, if I don't say anything, nothing's going to change. If none of us say anything, nothing's going to change, right? So I'm kind of just speaking through my experiences and trying to educate people through what I know, even though I'm still learning every single day. But the main focus and the main purpose is to encourage other people to do the same and to start speaking out and to start educating themselves. So that's the whole point of what I'm doing on social media. In terms of advice, I would say to start educating yourself. First of all, ask yourself the question, do I know enough? Do I know enough about racism? Do I know enough about the prejudices and the biases that I have? Am I able to acknowledge any privileges that I have? And I think not a lot of people are asking themselves that question, and they see themselves as not part of the problem. So that's kind of where it starts.
Go into it more, because I know you're holding back. I want you to speak your truth, girl. I'm calling you out. Go into it more. What experience exactly are you talking about?
Well, okay. I'm going to put it in the form of an analogy, because that's kind of what helped me rationalize it. And I'm going to speak from a youth sports perspective of how I've been feeling as an athlete, because that is honestly what fueled all of what I'm doing on social media, because I just wasn't being listened to by, the administration, the institutions, et cetera. So, for everyone listening, and yourself as well, if you want to, I want everyone, if you can, close your eyes and just picture a patch of grass in front of you, a large patch of grass. And picture that the grass is withered, it's yellow, it's crunchy, it's crispy, hasn't been watered in a while. And you have to walk across that patch of grass every single day to get to work, to get to school, whatever the case may be. That grass represents racism as a whole, okay? And as soon as the murder of George Floyd happens, that kind of snapped everyone's attention back to that patch of grass, right? That we had conditioned ourselves to kind of ignore, right? We walk across it every day, we kind of just forget about it. All of a sudden, that happens in May, everyone's attention is back on the grass. And some schools put out statements right away. Youth sports puts out a statement a couple of days later. Some schools talk about it right away. Some schools take a couple of weeks. There's a lot of pressure from BIPOC student athletes, coaches, administrators trying to force the schools to put out a statement. And the way I see that is the school's purchasing a lawnmower. And they're like, okay, we have the lawnmower. Okay, cool. We put out the statement saying we support our BIPOC student athletes. Cool. Couple weeks go by, nothing really tangible has been done. So again, it's coming from the BIPOC student athletes, coaches, and administrators saying, hey, we need to actually implement something to actually influence some sort of change that's going to be long lasting. And I see that as them saying, okay, let's mow the lawn, let's mow the grass, let's use the lawnmower, let's implement diversity training, let's create a task force for racial equity. A lot of schools have done that. That's great. I see that as mowing the lawn. But that we're kind of stuck. That's where we're at. And I think the reason we're here today is that the issue was never the grass to begin with. The issue is the soil. The issue is the foundation from which the grass grows, right? So we can keep mowing the lawn as much as we want, but the issue isn't the grass, it's the soil. So I feel like that's why we're here, is because we're going to dig up that soil. We're going to find some ugly things, but it needs to be done at this point. And I'm happy that we're finally having this conversation so we can do that. So that's why I've started doing all that stuff, because we need to start digging it up, and it's going to be ugly, but at this point it needs to be done.
Listen, Coach Tanisha, just before we got on air, she was like, let's have these conversations, but let's get action from them. So this is exactly why. And I hope that anybody watching or anybody listening and us as a collective group can also take this offline and be like, okay, what now? What do you want to do next? So I love that analogy of mowing the lawn and, you know, the patch of grass, but then the soil underneath. That's the foundation of it. People think they could slap a Band-Aid and be like, okay, sure, we'll hire BIPOC all of a sudden. Well, you know, are they qualified? Are they getting set up for success? Because in order to hire BIPOC and for them to succeed, they need the experiences leading up to that. They can't just be like, oh, you there. Yeah, you match the box that we're trying to check off. So you fit this role, but you have no training. And see, that's where for me, I see like a gap, and it comes all the way down to childhood and like the environment. So I appreciate you speaking on this on such a consistent basis as well. So, you know, thank you, and keep on posting your TikToks, because girl, for those who don't know, she has like 7 million views on TikTok. She's like TikTok famous with like 250,000. Am I getting that right? 250,000 followers?
Around there, something like that.
Yeah, you have a very large platform, and I'm so happy to see that you're using your voice right out of university and you're really putting yourself out there. And I saw the comments that you got, and guys, like, go on her TikTok and check it for yourself. These comments are actually savage. How does that make you feel? Before I go on to Donovan, how does that make you feel when you hear these extremely negative comments? I don't even want to say more than that. And then continue to also speak your truth.
Yeah, it's been interesting because I had only ever really experienced life from a suburban Ottawa perspective. So in terms of the racism I experienced, it was still bad. It was in the form of microaggressions, right? But once you get to the internet, that's a whole other story. And that was really the first time in my life that I had experienced overt racism, right? Straight up N-words, this, N-word, that, like all that stuff. And I'm really good at kind of filtering out my emotions. I'm working on it. So it was easy for me to just kind of ignore it until I realized that it was having an effect on me mentally and emotionally. But honestly, what keeps me going is the flip side of that. It's all of the positive comments. It's the paragraphs that I'm getting in my DMs of people saying that they're learning something and that, you know, it's really sparked some interest and, you know, they're starting to pay attention. I just recently posted a workshop on YouTube that a high school asked me to do, to kind of educate on racism and prejudice and white fragility and all that stuff. And the comment section under that video alone is incredible. And so many educators, professors, teachers have been asking to show that video to their classes. So that's really what keeps me going, right? For every negative comment I get, there's like 12 really amazing ones. So it's just a matter of trying to focus on those ones.
Well, thank you so much for using your voice and your platform. You have so much power, and people don't understand how much power their voice carries. As an individual and really making that difference. So continue doing that amazing work. I'm so happy that you don't just get discouraged by the extreme negative comments. And I'm also happy that before you go, that you use your voice for more than just racism. You call out transphobia and phobia and homophobia as well. And I think that's very important that we also acknowledge that exists within the broader spectrum and within the Black community as well. So thank you for that. Now I'm going to move on now to Donovan Bennett, but thank you for your time, Tyra. So Donovan is a former youth sport athlete, and I actually just learned this recently that he played football and was a pretty good player as a receiver at Western, and he became a huge advocate for the BIPOC violence in media. He's a Sportsnet producer and host, and it's kind of funny because I just had him on my show, Raptors Today, just yesterday. And we were talking about the responsibilities of using our platform. But let's take a look at this recent piece he produced at Sportsnet. It's an essay on hockey, and he says his words of affirmation for all those who exhibit Black excellence through the game of hockey. Let's check it out.
Scarborough. This is my hometown. For many who look like me, it's the home of hockey. It's no coincidence that a tough, resilient borough of Toronto is the birthplace of so many hockey players. Correction, so many black hockey players. But the proud history of black people in hockey is not a monolithic one. We've got representatives from both coasts, Canadian and American, male and female, stars and grinders. But why not more? Why not a coach, a scout, a league executive, a franchise owner, a Hall of Famer? Bet you didn't know we checked all those boxes. We're not trying to reach a quota, so why not more? All of those great contributors to the game start first as fans. Yes, we're hockey fans too. If you've been listening and learning, you know that despite our shared pain, you can't define us. No matter if you've been brought to this conversation because of a knee on the ice or a knee on a neck, just know that for the game of hockey to continue to prosper, black lives will have to continue to matter. We'll never let up. We'll never stop. In fact, we're not begging to be included. We're telling you we already are.
We going ultra black, I got a toast to that. We don't fold. Occasion we rose to that. We going ultra black, watching the global change, hopping the coldest range. We going ultra black. Black is beautiful. Black is beautiful.
The great history of hockey includes the great history of black people. So as we celebrate Black History Month from my city to yours, thank you to the game of hockey for all you've given black people. But more importantly, you're welcome for all we've given you.
Donovan, you got me smiling ear to ear right now. Like, as a producer, I'm like, yeah, yo, that's so well produced. Like, the soundtrack, the cuts. And, you know, yesterday I was honest with you and I was like, listen, I didn't know about that rich hockey history in Scarborough. You know, so I appreciate how you're using your voice and your platform at Sportsnet to really tell these stories. You know, I'll continue the conversation that we had yesterday and why you feel like it's important, what responsibility that we have as BIPOC, as Black media to tell these stories.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me, first off. And listen, I don't have you smiling. Nas and Hit Boy, who made the track, had me smiling. It was just a good excuse for me to get a Nas track on TV, one, and on Hockey Night in Canada, of all places. So, like, you can bear me now. My life is a success. And you know, diversity and representation matters for many reasons. You talk about the production, how tight it was. You know, that was my voice, and so I get the credit. But the producer of that piece was actually a female by the name of Michelle Mathat. So think about this. Hockey, like literally in sports, the oldest boys club that we have, you got a young-ish black male and a young female, a young female producing a piece for Hockey Night, right? And so, and it's been super well received. It's got well over 100K views on Twitter, which means nothing to the TikToker who was just here. That's light work. But the point is that when you cast a bit of a wider net, when you bring in some new perspectives, that only, you know, positive things happen. Like, this is not just my opinion. It's been studied. We know this, right? We're speaking to university students largely, and there are many case studies that have shown us that Fortune 500 companies and any organization, philanthropic, sports, whatever the case may be, they perform better when they are diverse. So that's why it's important to continue to make sure that everyone has a seat on the table. And diversity is not the goal, right? Inclusion is the goal, not just having a lot of people included. And so your question as to why I feel I need to use my platform to continue to hammer that home, because you started this entire thing off talking about something, and that's privilege. And we often talk about privilege in terms of white privilege, but there's all types of forms of privilege. I have privilege being a male, right? Like, there are opportunities afforded to me that some of my sisters won't have or will have a harder time to get. I have privilege being gainfully employed right now. I have privilege with my platform at Sportsnet because I know a lot of people either don't have it, or if they do, they're afraid to use it because there might be some repercussions. I can honestly say that's not the case for me. Or I'm just a stubborn, hard-headed Jamaican and I don't really care. Either way, that's a privilege. And so it's my responsibility to use that privilege for others to prosper.
Donovan, call it out. Speak your truth. I'm so here for this right now. Thank you, man, for being like open and vulnerable like that. You know, it gets me excited to have these conversations because we don't get to have them every single day. And I hate the fact, and we talked about this yesterday on the show, that, you know, we shouldn't be having these conversations just during Black History Month. It should be an entire year thing. You actually said something yesterday that really resonated with me. I literally replayed it in my head like 1,000 times. You said, you know, these aren't Black stories. These are just stories. Go into that, explore that a little bit more for me.
Yeah, I mean, like literally the Black stories that we're telling are just stories. They're human interest stories that just happen to be about Black people. We never talk when we're talking about baseball or talking about hockey. Man, we got to make sure we got enough Caucasian stories. Like they're just stories, right? And similarly, these stories that we're telling about Black people are just stories. And I was actually interviewing Cameron Bailey, who is the artistic director of TIFF, about, you know, how intentional he is about the representation that he puts forth in his films for his festival, which is world renowned. And he is, for those who don't know, he's a Black man. And he said, you know, there's humanity in seeing yourself in art and seeing yourself in entertainment, because what it tells you is that you matter, right? So there are so many different parts of our culture where unconsciously, subliminally, we're being told we don't matter as Black people, as BIPOC people. Like the default color of a bra is nude. Like nude for who? Nude for Caucasian people, right? So the industry in many ways is telling you that default is the experience that white people have, and that anything else is other, and thus is lesser than. And so through my art, through your art, it's important that we tell those Black stories over and over again until we oversteer to the point where they are just stories, where we're just telling stories about people. And we do that in February specifically because it doesn't happen enough for the other 11 months. But to your point, we need to continue to do it for the other 11 months because they are at their heart just stories.
Exactly. And you mentioned yesterday on the show as well, because we had Randy, who's the producer of Open Gym. You know, we're seeing these guys as father figures, not just any old stories. Like, we're not just seeing them as athletes, we're seeing them as players off the court as well. And that just brings in the humanity piece. And now one thing I will say to your point is, you know, I only realized that media was an option when I saw a woman who looked like me on TV being a sideline reporter for ESPN. That's Sage Steele. And she wore her hair curly and she was embracing that. And so I was like, wow, I never clicked in my head until I saw it. And I saw a girl that looked like me that I could relate to. So I think I think it's understanding now what representation means. And you're totally right. I think the goal is not just diversity, checking boxes. Oh yeah, don't worry, you got our token. No, it's inclusion, right? So I appreciate that. Do you have any final thoughts? We got to go to a break in a bit. Do you have any final other thoughts?
Yeah, that's a great point you made. I'll just wrap it up by saying that's why I mentioned the different roles that Black people in hockey have played, so that people realize, oh, there's someone who owns a team, there's a league executive, right? There are coaches. Okay, maybe I see myself not just as on the ice, but also around the sport. That's important. And then continuing outside of sports, we have to see each other as epidemiologists, as scientists, as politicians, as lawyers, and as hosts and producers like you. So continue to do what you do, because you and your representation matters a lot as well.
Thank you very much, Donovan. And hey, guess what? Our platforms matter too, because we might not have a TikTok following of 250,000, but any platform that anybody can speak on makes a difference. So question. Thank you, Donovan.
My pleasure.
All right, guys, we got to go to break. But after the break, we have Leanna Osei. Like I said, I go back with her, so I'm really looking forward to picking her brain on her accomplishments and what she's up to now. She's the women's basketball coach at St. FX and the founder of the Black Canadian Coaches Association.
Hey, U Sports fans, check out shop.usports.ca for this week's promotional item from the Nike Team Collection. Visitez le shop.usport.ca pour en profiter de la promotion de la semaine de la collection Nike Team.
Welcome back, guys. Now to join the conversation, I kind of introduced her just before the break, is Leanna Osei. Now, she's the head coach of St. FX women's basketball team, the founder of the Black Canadian Coaches Association. And just for reference of what exactly the BCCA does, they promote ideals of like diversity and inclusion in alliance with organizations at all levels of the Canadian sport industry, where they advocate and support athletes and coaches that are Black, Indigenous people of color to eradicate anti-Black and anti-Indigenous racial injustices. So welcome, Leanna Osei.
Thanks a lot, Sam.
Hey, it's so good seeing you. Oh, do you have me okay?
Oh yeah, I got you. Sorry, that might have been my mic. I'm really happy to be here, just talking to you guys on behalf of the BCCA, and shout out U Sports. I played 3 years at the U Sports level at Wilfrid Laurier University. Go Hawks! And had a great time there. And now I'm a U Sports coach at St. FX University in Nova Scotia, Canada.
That's amazing. And so tell me, go into it, because you created something that we hadn't seen before, which is the BCCA. Go into why do you feel the need to create that? How has it been doing so far? And what are you guys doing exactly?
Sure, absolutely. Well, firstly, I definitely cannot take credit for the inception of the BCCA. Only because I'm going to use this opportunity to shout out to Black coach trailblazers, John Thompson and John Chaney, who we both lost this year, who started the original Black Coaches Association. And that was a huge inspiration for this what we call our passion project. In June 2020, a lot of coaches were meeting really at the height of the onset of COVID, as well as the instances of racial justice that we were seeing perpetrated in the media. And, coaches, we come together and we're always talking about how we can better serve our athletes, how we can be better leaders in the community. And the BCCA really came to be from that. It really was a brainchild of coaches coming together. And it's certainly been a project that I've been working on that I wasn't intending on launching in the summer of 2020, but I think it's been an incredible year, certainly. And so we're a not-for-profit with 3 objectives centered around celebration, advocacy through allyship, as well as networking.
It's like so needed. And you just said right there that you weren't expecting to launch it in summer 2020. Why did you? And I think the reason's obvious, but please just go right in.
I think everyone kind of cites George Floyd as being the catalyst. And personally, for me, I've been through some challenges as a young coach myself, and then also as an athlete, as it relates to different bouts of racial discrimination. And I think the shift for me came once I became a head coach, and once I became kind of a decision maker. You start to ask yourself, how can I be a better leader for my athletes, for the students that I teach, and it's really centered around those kind of objectives. I think ultimately, God made this happen. I think He made it happen. COVID hit. I live in Antigonish, Nova Scotia. It's a really small community of 4,000 people. My mom picked up the phone and told me, "Don't come home," in her very thick African accent, right? "Leanna, you better not. COVID is here in Toronto. You better not come." And so all of a sudden, I went from doing individuals every day. I'm coaching every day. I'm teaching as well in our kinetics department, and I got all this free time in my hands. Now, the issue of racial discrimination touches me dearly because I have a brother who I unfortunately lost years ago, and part of what he struggled with was racial discrimination. Now, he didn't play any sports, but it's something that had always kind of played in my mind, and so I was compelled to do something, and that passion was aligned with academic professors across the country, with sport coaches, with athletes and young people that are trailblazers, and also with administrators and different sport leaders who are like, you know what, we need to do better. I think we all realize that Black Lives Matter is not a new phenomenon, at all. But the difference really has been allies really coming to to the forefront to stand in front of us in certain cases. And I think that's why we're on this movement right now.
Man, there's like 1,000 things I just want to like explore in just what you said there alone. And obviously, like, feel as comfortable as you feel to get into the thick of things, because I know it could be very heavy. You mentioned that you lost your brother. Was that within a racially charged incident?
My brother actually struggled with mental health and mental illness with bipolar disorder. He was working in the corporate space actually, and he dealt with a lot of challenges just with the lack of representation there, and even in his actual work as a working in the finance field. And so that it certainly was something that he struggled with. And you know, as someone who's a first generation female and growing up in a traditionally Western African household, there's different stigmas and stuff that we kind of have to deal with. Unfortunately, I wasn't in a position to help my brother, and you know, I really want to see a sport community and a Canadian society overall that is better well equipped to deal with things like these. And so we were talking a few minutes about sources of inspiration, and some of the inspiration has been the Masai Ujiris of the world. It has been the Donovan Bennetts of the world. It has been the Dennis Mitchells. It's been people even outside of the sports space, the Wes Halls who created the Black North Initiative. And so it's just really encouraging to see this movement that is happening that is very intentional, and incredible to kind of see these waves of change. Through the BCCA, we're not just coaches, we're educators, we're mentors, we're teachers. We have different committees. We have an anti-racism experts committee that really features some of our foremost leaders in this space and talking about anti-Black racism. We have a Black holistic health committee, and you know, in many ways, we've kind of turned into like a little bit of a hub, if you will, and with youth sport member institutions, CCAA institutions, and we want to really start pushing this message, and that, you know, sport can change the world. We've seen it happen. We know that the platform for sports has been used, has just been timeless in that, and it dates back to years. And I want to shout out the WNBA actually, because they take on a lot of the social initiatives, and it's just, I think we're in an incredible space and time, and now's the time for action.
I could talk about the WNBA forever, but it's not about the WNBA right now. It's about like what you guys are doing. And there's a few points that you kind of like, you went in there. For one, you know, it's mental health as a community as a whole. It needs to be addressed more, especially within sports. I think it's amazing how we have, you know, all these physiotherapists, all these athletic therapists, but where is necessarily the counselors, the people who help you mentally, and the therapists in psychological fields, you know, like I feel like that's just as important, if not more, because these physical injuries are seen physically or felt physically. And so I know like the Black community, like I had a really good friend who was an NCAA basketball player who, I lost her to mental health reasons as well. And it's something that like, as a Black community, it doesn't really go spoken to, because I feel like there is this presence or maybe even stereotype of like the strong Black woman or Black man, and we don't really get to talk about it too much. We don't really bring up our problems to the forefront. So I wanted to touch on that real quick, but then also, you know, what has been the reception that you've gotten since starting this organization? You said it's a hub, and it just sounds like you're doing way more than just coaching in this hub. What's been the reception that you've gotten?
It's been an incredible reception, and I think the timing of it all really worked out. In October 2020, in collaboration with the Coaching Association of Canada, we launched the first ever Black female coach mentorship program, and just being really intentional about carving out a space that is centered around mentorship and networking and connecting. And especially in a time like this where everything has gone virtual and it's been tougher for people to communicate. So the reception for programs like that have been incredible, and we're hoping to roll out mentorship programs that are sports specific. And of course, coaching is usually the third hat that many people in our Canadian sport community wear, because there's only so many professional jobs, if you will. And so it's about, you know, those other things, the social support, you know, business advice, you know, how to protect yourself, you know, all those kind of things really come into play. So it's been exciting. The I would say the single most incredible thing we've been able to help spearhead is a racial equity project. And so it was a call to action that we put out to youth sports institutions and Canadian college institutions to start collecting race-based data for the first time. And it's something that we haven't done at all. And so what does that mean? It means we're not able to validate experiences. It means we're not able to understand what that space is, who we're servicing, who we're not, as it relates to that racialized minority lens. And, you know, we've definitely taken some inspiration from the Institute of Diversity and Ethics in Sport in the US. And, you know, they have a gender and a racial report card that they put out annually. And so thank you to our partners at University of Toronto and the Ideas Lab, really taking a leading role in collecting some of that race-based data. And the OUA actually has started the OUA Anti-Racism Project that is geared around some of those common calls to action around, you know, hiring practices and policies, and really taking a look at our AFA system, and, you know, as it pertains to financially supporting athletes, looking at how can we provide resources around anti-racism training. You know, it's funny, you're in an educational institution, and so by definition, people from all walks of life are coming together. And so what's been incredible to see is we do this kind of work with other initiatives and other topics. And so that's kind of how I'm contextualizing things. And our space has been better at acknowledging that, you know, mental health is an issue in today's society, and we need to continue to support people, LGBTQ plus initiatives and awareness. And so to me, you have to be anti-racist. It's not good enough anymore. You know, we're changing that status quo, and that's, you know, we want to align with our partners and align with allied organizations and individuals. And I thank all the leaders in the space that have really committed to this.
That's amazing. And I just love how you're putting real facts, hard numbers to tell the story, rather than just, you know, people saying that there's a problem. Because we could have all these conversations, but to some people, it's the numbers that really resonate. It's the numbers that, oh crap, like, no, they're not kidding. Like, this X many athletes are of this skin tone and they're not getting XYZ in scholarships, or XYZ in this or that. So I'm looking forward to seeing the information that you guys are going to come up with alongside with U of T that you mentioned. I have to now move on to our next guest, but do you have any final thoughts?
You know what? I wanted to quote John Chaney, who we recently lost. He said, "I just want to be remembered as someone who cared." And I want to put that out to our whole sports community. I think we all care. We all love Canadian sport. You know, it's not a multi-billion-dollar industry, but there's something about the power of sport. Like Nelson Mandela said, sport can change the world. It truly can. And I think the more we can empower one another, the more we can support one another, the more we can be intentional about having these quote unquote uncomfortable conversations. I call them courageous conversations. I think we need to encourage one another to keep doing it and follow it up with some action. Thank you so much, Chad.
Absolutely. No problem. Thank you for speaking your truth. Honestly, I appreciate it. I know it's not easy. All right, guys. So taking the conversation now to the West Coast, we have Tyrell Lang, and now he's representing youth sports athletes as a fifth-year athlete. He's a guard for the UNBC Timberwolves. He's a basketball player. He's very outspoken on anti-racism, as he actually released a video addressing just that. So take a look at it. It's about Black Lives Matter, and right after, we'll be back with him.
I'm Tyra Lang, point guard for the UNBC Timberwolves. It's 2020. We feel like we've come so far in this world, and our ancestors and people who have paved the way for us have made it a lot easier, but we're still not as far removed as a lot of people think. And it feels just extremely disappointing when things happen just because of the texture of your hair, the color of your skin, the way you talk, the way you walk. Definitely super frustrating experiencing racism when you know that you're not doing anything wrong or anything to deserve it. You're in a position where you didn't choose these things. These things are just, bestowed upon you, whether you like it or not. And it's super unfair to everybody who experiences that. It wasn't that long ago, actually, when I went on Kijiji and I was actually looking at an ad or a post for a basement suite being rented. And at the end of the price, in brackets, it said whites only. You become accustomed to certain things, and that's sort of a sad reality. That in today's day and age, that somebody would have to get used to being treated differently. What makes me proud? Well, it makes me proud to represent a culture. It makes me proud to represent family. It makes me feel like sometimes an underdog, fairly or not, but just being able to represent a group of people that are extremely special. It definitely feels bad that I'm even having to sit up here and have these types of conversations and to speak on a thing like this. It is hard to be Black, not only in America, not only in Canada, but almost anywhere in the world. I think a lot of that stems from just systematic inequalities in people in government and positions of power, predominantly being Caucasian males who are making big decisions, who can really influence that change. So I believe that Black people have been placed behind the 8 ball from the get-go. We are a long ways away from getting to where we need to in terms of racism, but it starts from the ground up. It starts from the roots in our communities. We will know that we've come somewhere with racism after we realize that we feel normal in all circumstances. Not just being pulled over by the police, not just being in a grocery store with eyes on you, but in all walks of life. People are judging you based on the texture of your hair or the color of your skin. It sort of separates you from your community, is what I feel like. You feel like you have sort of unfair burdens placed on you. A lot of frustration and a lot of outrage has been taking place across the globe, and deservedly so. We're all frustrated, and I think the important thing to note is that we're all in this together. So I think it's really important that we are brave. I think it's important that we use our voices to speak up when things aren't right, when we hear things that aren't right. I encourage everybody and want them to know that sometimes these conversations are hard. Oftentimes there are people that we care about or people that we love that are contributing to the problem. And those tough conversations sometimes need to be had in order for us to truly make change.
Tyrell.
Hello.
How's it going?
I'm well, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm good. That video was powerful, man.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, the crazy thing is, I almost didn't make it. So our video guy came to me, and it was just after the George Floyd incident, and I knew that I had to say something, but I wasn't sure exactly how I was going to go about it. And then our video guy, Rich Abney, reached out to me and said, "Hey, I'm going to give you a platform," and I just felt like it was my duty to speak.
Okay, so what made you feel the need? So you said George Floyd, and there's many different ways to speak on a platform. You could use TikTok,
Right.
or you could. I did when I was processing the George Floyd information. It took me 2 weeks to really feel like, hey, what can I say here? And then I ended up writing a post on Instagram. You went ahead and produced a full-fledged 5-minute video.
Right.
Why did you feel the need to do that?
Yeah, I think it was just because with it, like we looked at all the schools in youth sports as well, and a lot of people were posting just some messages in support and solidarity, and I just felt like, you know, why not put a face to it? Why not put a real life person and shed some real emotions into a video that could really touch people?
That's fair. That's no, that makes complete sense, because I feel like when people can physically and like almost like tangibly see with their senses and like understand there's a face to this, it's not just these words being flown around, it connects, it resonates better, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned in the video that you came across was it a Kijiji ad?
Yeah, actually, that was about 2 years ago, and yeah, it was just a basement suite that was being posted for rent, and they posted the price, and beside it said whites only, and that was shocking to see, honestly.
And like, I mean, you're a student. You're a student at the time too.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, for sure.
I can only imagine as a student, like, you know, you're looking potentially for a place to live, while being a student athlete, you know, getting your rest and recovery and everything, but then having to deal with this extra layer of, wait, I can't live here, like whites only. Like, how did that really make you feel?
Yeah, well, initially you're just kind of shocked. Like, it's 2000, I guess 19 at the time, and we feel like we're removed from, you know, where people can't eat at restaurants or people can't live in such and such area, and it's like this is still here. It's prevalent. It's right in front of me.
You know, judging, you know, you said something along the lines of, you know, judging off the color of your skin or the texture of your hair. Those lines really got to me, because it's interesting that even within the Black community, there's certain levels of, I don't know if I can call it quite racism, but privilege, as lighter skin tones seem to be more glorified. And you know, it's an uncomfortable conversation to have, but you know, what's your experience with that? Like, because you know, there is a certain level of privilege, I will say, when it comes to being more white passing than Black.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with you. I mean, of course, like being biracial, like I am, and skin is a little bit lighter, you can see that there is discrepancy sometimes between the, you know, just the levels, as you said, of sort of Blackness. And that's super disappointing at the same time, because, you know, you see some people can take advantage of that, and some people are leaning towards, you know, more of a Caucasian, you know, if they cut their hair and they look a certain way, and, you know, other people are the opposite. So yeah, that's super unfortunate.
Of course. And like, but I guess like the main thing is like, you know, how do we change the narrative? How do we go ahead and navigate these waters to like be equal, to be seen as like, no, we are one and the same?
Yeah, I think it starts like with the Black community itself. I think that is big, like just seeing ourselves, no matter like the skin tone. I think it's been a good job of the Black community. From my experience, at least, like I've been around, you know, all shades of Black people look like me and darker. But yeah, I truly believe that does start with the Black community, just standing as one. Like, we are one, and we're not going to be, you know, separated in any way, regardless of, you know, all of our shades.
How do you feel that you're perceived?
Perceived just as a person, as an athlete?
Yeah. Or as person, athlete.
Yeah, in my community, it's interesting because I'm playing for the university in the same town that I grew up in. So I looked up heavily to the university athletes, and, you know, really took what they said and looked up to them, admired them. So in my community, I do believe that like I'm a voice and like sort of a figure of I don't want to say hope, but just somebody that people look up to, that can rely on for, you know, words of encouragement, especially in times like these.
And, you know, being a student athlete is almost like being a role model. Like you kind of touched on it there. Like, how important is that for younger generations of the Black community, or just anybody in general, really, to come see you like lead the way? Like, you know, student athlete, that alone is a whole task to itself. Right.
Yeah. I think it's amazing in the sense that you have a platform and you have a responsibility, but it's more important what you choose to do with it. Like I said before, like I almost didn't make the video because, you know, I wasn't sure what to do, but I just realized that like this can't be a question of, do we want to do something? Like that shouldn't be even a question. Like we have to. This is our duty. Our ancestors struggled. People have endured, things that I couldn't even fathom. So to sit up there and speak over something that is, that is tragic is, in my opinion, much easier than what's previously happened. So.
Yeah, it's easier to speak about it and ask for demand justice than it is for anybody to go through it. We could feel the emotional weight, we could feel it, but we look at like Breonna and how like she was shot in her sleep, or it's still kind of unclear exactly. I hear multiple stories, but all we know is that she's not alive, she's not with us, she's resting in power. And there's so many cases like that across the states, across Canada. People forget that this is very much a domestic issue. I've had to talk about it on my Raptors Today show about how Draymond Green said, I don't understand basically how BLM is relevant to Canada. And Chris Boucher called him out being like, am I not a black man?
Absolutely. So, yeah, for sure. That was crazy. Yeah. I think that the NBA, like just because you mentioned, Chris and Draymond, I don't mind what they're doing. Just with obviously they usually do things with Black History Month in the month of February, and they, we see their shirts that they're wearing now is built by Black History. I think that's what it says across their chest, right? I think that's cool. I think that's something unique that, looking at youth sports in itself, like what can we do in the month of February? I haven't seen I'm a part of the Canada West, and we have like breast cancer awareness month, or not month, just we have like a day where people wear, we have our own t-shirts and have fundraisers, things of that nature. So I think that would be really interesting to bring to the table.
That would be. Just final question for you. You made this video. It's awesome. It's amazing. Where do you go from here?
Yeah, well, absolutely cannot stop. So I have actual a plan that I'm looking to have play out after COVID's finished. So what that's going to look like is I want to go to elementary schools. I live in a city. It's not very big, like it's 80,000 or something. But I know all elementary schools, and like I grew up here. So I want to go to the elementary schools. My head coach, Todd Jordan, has a background in education. He was a teacher. So he wants to put a plan together with me. And I want to go around to the elementary schools and give a little presentation on Black history and Black culture. And then ultimately the end game or end goal would be to teach it to maybe another student athlete on my team or just in the city, and just cover, all the elementary schools and just give them some history.
I love that. It's amazing how we don't teach Black history, not really, in the school system. I was talking to my colleagues before, and I was like, I had to go home, and my Jamaican father had to sit me down and tell me about the Underground Railroad in Canada and a lot of other Black history items that we don't see in the curriculum that you think should just be common nature. Like, it's amazing to me, at least, how we teach the history and the truth of people who came and colonized. And like when we talk about Indigenous people and how they were stripped of their rights. Right. And no different than like how Black people were really treated, to be honest. So I'm happy. That sounds like a great plan to go.
Yeah. And like even in post-secondary institutions, like in British Columbia, we don't have like, at least at my school, like I would love to see it be implemented more in just even like 100 level class, just be offered to, Black history, Black culture, just to learn more about it. Like it's in the high schools, but not as much as I would like to see. So I think just in the education systems, in the youth, I think that is key.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. Do you have any final things to say?
No, thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Pleasure. Take care, man. All right, guys, from the ball court to the ice rink now, we have Krishana Green, aka Crash. She's a fellow Ryerson Ram, and I wish I got to know her better when I was playing at Ryerson, but it's okay because now we get to know her now. As young as the age of 11, she was hit hard by racism, and we're going to actually watch this video where she describes the racial barriers that she had to face.
There's a lot of Black fathers that come to the games and they usher their daughters down to take a picture with me because they're proud of the process of the game and how it's progressed, and they want their daughters to aspire to be captains of their university teams. Playing in the same building that my grandfather played in, it just speaks volumes. He did so many things here. He let me know he scored a goal here. And so whenever I hear things like that, I'm thinking, well, I got to do better. And so it's very inspiring, but at the same time, it keeps me competitive to beat whatever he did. I actually had an experience after a game when we were shaking hands. My team had won, and I was first in line, and the first 3 people in the opposing team actually, each of them called me, 3 of them called me the N-word going through the handshake, and I couldn't really handle it, to be honest. I fell out of the line. I immediately got off the ice. I didn't finish the handshakes. In that moment, everything changed, actually. Everything about hockey changed for me.
I'd say if there's one trait that really has made the difference in Crash being the leader that she is the confidence that she has, and not just in herself and her own abilities, but also in those around her and what we're capable of as a group and as a team. What Crash has done with our program is remarkable. We've gone from a last place team to a team that feels like we can contend with anybody, and now we expect to win hockey games. And that confidence that she had from the very beginning, that's spread through our entire team now.
Young black girls, they'll look and say, "You're a captain? You're the captain?" It's like unfathomable. So it's really nice to be put in a position where I can be visible for them and be a good role model.
Hey, Crash, how's it going?
Good, how are you?
I'm good. You know, when you look back at that video and all the obstacles that you had to face and you're talking about it, you know, how does that make you feel? What are you getting out of it yourself?
It's a roller coaster, actually. When I first started watching it, you know, I want to smile. I'm proud of myself, the position I'm in. And then as the story went on, I guess, you know, there's still work to be done there, because that was like scarring for me. And I don't think I ultimately ever moved past it, because the game itself hasn't quite changed its style around racial barriers and everything like that. So watching it's a roller coaster. I'm happy and proud of myself. And then I get reminded that, you know, these things are still present, or, you know, these things are still, you know, a part of the game, and I got to work my way through it.
Man, I wish I got the opportunity to really connect with you when we were both at Ryerson at the same time.
Yes, definitely, especially because you guys were killing it. Like, women, the place was packed out. People would be showing up for the women's games, packed out, the men's games. I love that.
Oh, stop. Hey, your hockey nights, you're being nice. Your hockey nights were sold out. When you guys had like the specialty, like I couldn't even get a seat. I was like standing up on the top of the bleachers at Maple Leaf Square Gardens, and I'm just like looking down like, wow, what's it like to be a hockey player? Let alone like, okay, sure, like a black female hockey player in a building that has so much history that your grandfather has played in.
It's a major privilege. The facilities itself are unreal, right? But just being in hockey and usually being the only one black person, it's nice to be highlighted or have my stories highlighted out there, that people care at Ryerson to tell my side of things and not just, you know, run with a straightforward, you know, white attitude towards, you know, the game and how it works. And so for me, it's always been a privilege.
That's incredible. And, you know, I find it always interesting when I hear about these legacy kids that carry on the sport of their grandparents, of their fathers, or, you know, for me, my dad played and my aunts played. And so it kind of felt like I, you know, had to play. But what did it feel like to you? Did you have a choice, or did you really just come to it organically? Did you think of something else? Like, what was your thought process?
We're a hockey family. Like, my background is a hockey family. And so my brother got started and he was a goalie, and I wanted to do anything my brother did. And at the same time, I had hockey drilled into me by my grandfather constantly. And so it was inevitable. I was definitely going to be a hockey player.
Okay. And so what's it like now to, like, to be the only Black player on the ice, like probably the majority of the time as a woman? What's that like? Talk. This is a space that I'm not familiar with.
Yeah, it's I would say it's more hostile than people realize. When I was younger, when I got my hair braided or I left my hair out, people would just touch it, and me, I was thinking the entitlement to just reach into somebody's head and fool around with it. I thought it was just outrageous, but it was just natural to them, natural to touch it and stuff like that. And then as you get older, you hear different comments. Sometimes they say thug instead of, the N-word and stuff like that, these microaggressions. And when you look around to try and tell somebody about it, everybody else is white. Your coaches are white, your therapists are white. So it's not a safe space. And to talk about it, it's uncomfortable for both parties, for white people and for Black people. And so what happens is just everybody's disadvantaged in that moment. And for me, it's like, it felt like a lot of tokenism. Like I was the one Black person and I didn't really conform. I wasn't, playing a bunch of country music and just different ways that they live their lives. And so I definitely felt like the other person, like an othering sense of feel, because I was listening to rap music, I was in Black culture and stuff. And so it wasn't quite resonating. It didn't feel as inclusive for me.
I'm smiling because I just remember in the weight room when I would know the hockey team was in the weight room by one, the smell. You guys, the equipment was nasty. Okay. And by two, the country music. Okay. The country music was blasting in the weight room. But how did you stay strong in this environment that, you don't see your face every single day? How did you keep on going? Like, listen, if someone called me the N-word, 3 people, I don't even know what I would do. I don't know how I react. I think you took the high road and just by skating off there. Like but I'm sure this is probably something that you've gotten, sadly, maybe even accustomed to on the ice. Is it not? Like, how does that feel? How do you stay strong?
Yeah, you go through it and it doesn't get better. Like I was never desensitized to it, but my family, my mom, my dad, my grandfather, even my brother, they thought that I could do it. And they knew that I was going to have some trials and tribulations. But what they did was they prepared me beforehand. It didn't quite work because when it happened, I was like, this is how it feels. This is the trauma. Oh my goodness. But they tried their best to prepare me. And after it happened, I had a safe space. I had a place where I could go and just be held and told that, that's not a reflection of me. That's not who I am. That's a reflection of them or maybe their upbringing, when it's younger people. But overall, it's my family. I got to give all the credit to them for supporting me so much. And, obviously I had some great teammates as well that had my back and have reached out and stood up for what was right.
Now, you're being so humble right now. I love it because, I remember just being around Ryerson and you always hear like the whispers around who's the who on the team. And let me tell you, everybody would like tap me on the shoulder and say, yo, you know who that is? Yo, let's crash. Her NHL player. Yo, he's a captain. She's dope. Dope. Like, you didn't only just like survive, you thrived in this kind of hostile environment at times. Now though, kind of, you're no longer at Ryerson. You're moved past the university. What's your involvement with the hockey world now?
Now I am working on growing the game. So with youth, I'm included. I speak to high executives, that control the operations of hockey around, the area. I haven't quite made the jump with the women's side. Actually, it's like I'm trying to cover the bases of all of hockey right now. But my focus is definitely like the women's side of things. And other than that, with COVID, I just hit the pond with some of my teammates and this and that. I'm waiting for a little bit of the uncertainty to go away, but keep looking. I think there's going to be like an announcement in a month or two and stuff, and initiatives coming through.
You heard it here first, folks. Initiative is coming through. I've seen like the Black Girls Hockey Club on Twitter before, and I know they're outspoken, and I love what they're doing. So I'm excited to, more initiatives, more positivity around this game and changing the culture of it. I think it's very important. Do you have anything else to say?
Yeah, I just have one thing to say is like, there's mindfulness, and I think for a lot of people, they think it's like asking you how your day is, but I think there's just layers to that. And to get to the real conversations, you got to get uncomfortable, and you're probably talking about the right things if you are uncomfortable. And I think hockey's going to make it through. I think there's just, a lot more learning to happen, and, we got to pay attention.
Absolutely. One final question. Would you want your daughter to play?
Yes.
Have you ever had a daughter in the future? Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. The hockey world's in good hands. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, guys, we've got to take another break and continue the conversation with Bowie, former U Sports men's soccer player. And I believe he'll also be talking to me in en français after the break as well.
In just one moment, the world can change. In one moment, history can be made. In one moment, the incredible can be achieved. In one moment, some will fall, but all will rise. 1,000 moments are coming. We'll save you a seat.
We've come all this way for one chance on the biggest stage.
Canada, summer games are going to
A road to glory. To one spectacular destination. A journey to transform and unify. We do it for passion. We do it for pride. Or even just for a smile. For every start, there is a finish line. For every stumble, a triumph. A groundbreaking for record-breaking. Lifting these to lift these. To celebrate and inspire. With the strength of a community or the support from a familiar face. We are ready for adversity. For the hype. For the chants and cheers. For the sweat. For the tears. Once and for all.
Welcome back. Right now we have Bowie Nasami. Bowie, pleasure to speak with you today. I'm just going to give you a quick intro because you're a well-seasoned athlete, former Team Canada under-17 soccer player. You also played Division I soccer and basketball, like overachiever over here at Dawson College. In the RSEQ, and you finished your sport career playing varsity soccer at Brock University. So hey, welcome. How you doing? Oh, I don't hear you. Are you muted?
Yeah, you actually have me on mute.
Okay, there you go. How you doing, man?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me. I've been in the background listening to the conversations and quite inspiring.
Okay, I'm happy to hear that. Hey, man, I'm getting inspired just by listening to everybody's answers. Talk to me about your experience as a student athlete when you went through it.
I mean, just to represent the Quebec, I think some of the answers are going to be in French.
Absolutely.
En fait, j'ai toujours été un joueur qui joue deux sports, basket et le soccer. Et pendant mon temps, je suis très chanceux que j'ai eu des bons coéquipiers on a toujours travaillé ensemble et notre objectif, c'était toujours de gagner. Alors, quand il venait tant des moments difficiles, on était toujours ensemble. So basically, growing up, I've always been a dual athlete, basketball and soccer. And I think that I consider myself very lucky, as I've always had great teammates. During tough times, in all the teams I've played on, I've had great coaches and great teammates. And together, we've always kind of battled the difficult things. I remember playing soccer. In Montreal, in Montreal, you don't get that. But when you leave the city, you go up north to play in the smaller region. And I'm always this big guy on the field. There were certain things that were said, but at the end of the day, that has never been my focus. My focus has always been to be a leader. And so when you hear those things, you have a chance. Should I battle it? Or should I focus on what I'm here to do, which is to win soccer games and score goals? And that has always been my focus. Pick your battles and focus on why you're there. So, and I think that has gotten me to where I am today.
Man, okay, there's so much to debunk right there. Because for one, we shouldn't even have to pick our battles. We shouldn't have, the only battles we should be having is on the field or the court, or in the classroom when we're trying to battling to get those grades up. Like, we shouldn't really be having to face an extra layer of racism within our sport organizations or administrations, or just in society in general. So, talk to me, you kind of mentioned it. You went from Montreal, now you're playing in a smaller market. You also played at Brock, which is very much a larger market, I guess you could say, around Niagara Falls. What's it like in those locations as an athlete? And also, I also want to ask, between playing in soccer and the difference between soccer and basketball as well.
And
go ahead, if you want to speak French first and then English, that's totally good.
OK. Pour moi, j'ai eu le choc quand je suis allé à l'université de Brock. Comme je disais, pendant toute ma vie, j'ai toujours eu la chance. Pour moi, c'était toujours de me concentrer dans mon sport. Quand il venait des temps où des choses arrivaient, j'ai décidé de le laisser toujours de côté et me concentrer dans le sport. Mais j'ai eu un choc quand je suis allé à l'université de Brock. C'était un choc pour moi parce que encore plus, il fallait que je prouve qui j'étais. So the biggest shock I think in my athletic career, I think was at Brock in Montreal. I think Montreal, growing up in Quebec, was home to me. I'm so used to a lot of things, and I'd like to say I was a city boy going to a small town, and I'm a big guy. You can't miss me. I'm walking in the hallway, on the pitch. You really can't miss me. So at Brock, I always felt like I had to prove myself an extra more than I did while I was in Montreal, because, the fact that I'm Black, and also the fact that I think that, in order for people to get comfortable around you, you need to show that you are not what they see on TV. I don't know exactly what the things are, but, there's always a sense of, I need to do better so they can be comfortable, right? So, and at the end, that's how I've literally lived my life. And I've grew up in the family where, you focus on sport, you focus on school. School is very important. And the others, you kind of push them aside. And at Brock, my first year was a huge shock, more than ever. Il fallait que je prouve, il fallait que je sois quelqu'un que je n'étais pas, juste pour que les gens soient confortables à côté de moi. But as time went on, I think it got better. When you look at Brock University today, it's not the same Brock that I started in 2013. So things have changed. But the biggest thing is, growing up, I had a choice to make, and it was stay focused on your craft and school. So for me, that has been my motto.
What has been the biggest change that you've seen?
The biggest change. So if I give the example, at my time at Brock, the biggest change I've seen, I was there for 4 years, and through those 4 years, I've seen tremendous change. From my first year, where I had to prove to people that I'm not this. I never know what it is. I had to just prove to people that I'm not what you think I am. And as the time went on, and another thing was, you know, as a student athlete, you're always looking for student jobs inside the university. At first, you couldn't find that at Brock, but you know, now it's like the university is so diverse. They've done a tremendous job in making sure that students of color, of BIPOC, kind of feel comfortable. Compared to my first year, it was, you know, a lot of things have changed.
That's very interesting. I think you touched on a point that we haven't quite gotten to, and that is the unsaid expectations of a BIPOC, of a Black student athlete. You know, I've always carried it around on my shoulders to never perpetuate the stereotype. Don't be the angry Black woman. Don't create a fuss or a fight. And it's hard because in the natural competitive nature of sports, you want to be able to fully express yourself with free of judgment. Have you ever felt that way as well?
Soccer days, playing soccer, yeah, a lot of times I held it in me because, comme tu dis, tu veux pas l'air d'une personne noire qui a la rage, qui crie toujours à certaines personnes. Notre objectif, ça a toujours été, comme je disais tout à l'heure, garder le calme, gagner nos matchs. Mais au moment donné, ça rentre en nous et ça devient difficile d'accepter tout ça. Et c'est pour cela que je me considère chanceux. I consider myself lucky. I've had great coaches, and one of them, even though I didn't play basketball at Brock University, I feel like I've played for him, Coach Charles Kissy, great mentor of mine. And through the 4 years, he's the one during those tough times. I'll just knock on his office door. He's with athletes. He's just, Bowie, what do you want? And can I have a second coach? And then I tell him my problem, and he always had the best advice. And I think that as we continue to move forward, we need, who said it earlier? Lee said it, a lack of representation. In these organizations, especially institutions, especially sport organizations in Canada, we need to see a lot of these athletes, top marketing sports, I would say, are BIPOC athletes. And I think that as a BIPOC athlete, we need to see our representation of people running the show. In my example, I had Coach Kissy every time I went, and soccer was the same thing. The more I felt comfortable going to talk to him. I remember, again, at Brock University, Ryerson and Brock during my time was a rivalry that during basketball games, you didn't want to miss that. And I remember Dr. Ivan Joseph came up to me because I was highly involved in in student activities. Like, I like what you're doing. And for me, it was like, whoa, that's actually very cool for someone of color, for someone, a great leader like that, to see what I'm doing. It's like, it's inspiring. So I think that in order for us to continue to move forward, these are things that we need to see more often if we want to make things better.
It's so interesting because, you know, like, for example, walking down the street, if I see a Black man or a Black woman, I make quick eye contact. It's one of the nod, right? It's almost like an acknowledgement. Without even complete stranger, right? It's just like a complete, like, I see you, you see me, we're in this together. And so when you have these people in the positions of power, decision-making positions, or even just support, has nothing to do with you. Like, people need to understand how powerful that is, how much of a difference that truly makes, because you feel more inclined to open up to people that look like you. You know, you have a shared history somewhere down the line. You know, a lot of Black people in North America are descendants from colonization and like everything that has happened was there, which we can go into, but maybe not today.
Tu vois, je suis très d'accord avec toi dans le sens que la raison pourquoi toute ma vie j'ai voulu travailler dans le sport, c'est parce que pourquoi je voulais être un athlète, parce que je voyais d'autres athlètes qui ressemblaient à moi. Tu as toutes les Michael Jordan, tu as les LeBron James, tu as tous les noms des athlètes noirs. Ça m'a donné envie d'être un athlète. Mais si j'avais if you know, seeing all these stars made me wanted to be an athlete. But imagine if growing up, you look at all these sport organizations in Canada had a better representative of Canada itself, of how diverse we are. Maybe instead of just focusing on wanting to be an athlete, I could dream of being something else, right? Because right now, and I think that's I when you look at in the idea of George Floyd, you look at it, the whole world was hit. But you look at all these organizations, everyone came up with a statement, right? And it's a thing to do. We've done it so many times. However, if you look at the board of directors, you look at the high staff of all these organizations, you do not see a representation of what our society should look like, right? So, and that has to change somehow, right? And I think that that's how change youth sport. This initiative is awesome. I've never seen anything like this, but these are things that we need to continue to do in order to create a safe space for everyone else. And that's the end. That's the end goal. Our athletes, our youth sport athletes need to feel safe for us to continue to excel. And just to give one last thing here, growing up, everything was NCAA, NCAA, NCAA. But you look at youth sport athletes now were able to compete at the highest level with NCAA players. So we do have great athletes in Canada, but we just need to make them feel comfortable and create a safe space where they can dream to be bigger than who they actually are.
You touched on so many points there. I love this conversation tonight because everybody's just going ham, and thank you. Thanks to everybody who's honestly been just giving it all tonight. First of all, yeah, you touched on it, and I feel like I want to get more into this with Charles and Dr. Ivan Joseph. But yeah, the Black leadership on top. Why is it that I don't know what the exact stats are, but I know in the NBA it's something around the 90% mark of league franchise owners and just leaders in the front office are predominantly white, and yet the league itself is predominantly Black. So that alone is not a good look. But the other thing I want to touch on to your point is the fact that you brought up, athletes have been glorified. You talk about the LeBron James and James Hardens and everybody else, that they're on this superstar platform. And for a lot of Black youth, they see that as, well, that's what I can be because I see it. Like I said before, I saw a woman who looked like me on TV being a sideline reporter, and I knew that that's what I want to do because I saw it. Seeing kind of is believing. And so, but when it was the last time we saw a Black doctor, a Black scientist, a Black STEM researcher, there's so many other fields that we can really put our energy into. And then the whole other thing is also, why do we go into sports and excel in sports? Well, I mean, a part of that, I think, is also because a little bit of need, of an essential. That's a lot of, the Black community can get scholarships. We have a carrot in front of our house, of our nose, and be like, hey, you perform well here, you get a scholarship here, you don't have to worry about student debt. Because otherwise, I know that there's a number of student athletes that couldn't afford going to school without a scholarship. School's expensive.
Et c'est quelque chose, tu parles des bourses, c'est quelque chose que nous, en termes de société canadienne, pour le sport, on doit faire un effort parce que l'égalité n'est pas là. C'est pas tout le monde. Crash a parlé tout à l'heure de son expérience au hockey, mais c'est pas tout le monde qui a les sous pour mettre ses enfants dans le hockey. Alors, il faut juste que nous, en termes de société, on continue à travailler fort ensemble et de mettre tout le monde sur la même page. C'est ça l'objectif. Et tu vois que quand la plupart des jeunes de couleur noire, tu vois qu'ils viennent d'un milieu défavorisé. Alors, c'est dur pour eux. Premièrement, leur cheminement est déjà difficile. Et le fait qu'ils veulent participer dans les événements sportifs, ils n'ont pas les moyens. Alors, il faut juste qu'en termes de société, en termes d'organisation de sport, qu'on continue à aider we continue to help athletes that don't have, because when you look at those that don't have, dominantly as just the people of color. So I think that's another point that you brought up that can make change. We're here to discuss things that we can do to get better, right? And you hit it out of the ballpark. It's like we need to provide an environment where those that don't have still feel like they're part of something big. So yeah.
Absolutely. Mohammed's telling me, hey, we got some more guests to keep it going. We love the conversation, but I appreciate. Do you have any final thoughts?
My final thought, the biggest thing is all these sport organizations should have a representative of our society, from the COC, from U Sport to Canada Games, wherever we are. We need to have a representative of what? Because by doing that, it's bigger, because you're giving an opportunity for a child to dream and say, I want to be that person, not just an athlete, but there are other things that they can dream to be.
I love that. I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Savannah.
All right, take care. All right, next up we got Charles Kissy. I know him way too well. We've been working like almost every single day together on a few projects, but he is from being a youth sports athlete at McMaster to a police officer in the Toronto region to a coach at Ryerson and Brock University and the Raptors 905 assistant coach. Man, how long is this guy's resume? Head coach now and GM at the Guelph Nighthawks in the CEBL. He is a very successful resume in sports. So, I say that with passion. I say that with love because, it's something that's much needed in these spaces. So Charles, off the court, he has also founded a business called Equity Connections. So if you want to welcome in Charles here, where is he at? There he is. Hey Charles. Long time no talk.
I know. It's been a couple days. I'm great. How are you doing?
I'm good. I got to get right on into it because we are getting a little tight for time as much as I love these conversations. But, Charles, talk about your new business, what the purpose is it serving. It's called Equity Connections. So I'll let you do all the talking here.
Yeah, I'll give you the short version. First of all, you can find us at equityconnections.ca. This really started out of the podcast. I have a podcast called Think About It, which explores systemic racism in different segments in our society. And the podcast sort of spawned this Equity Connections, which is not just myself. I can't say it's just me. It's Dr. Denise Armstrong, who is a professor at Brock University, and Cheryl Scobie Edwards, who's an educator and principal in the TDSB. So, you know what, we saw a need. And for us, it was about the action and looking at not just talking about it and doing the research. A lot of people say there's a lot of research to be done, and I'm 100% with that. But there's also work to be done that we could start now. And so this was an opportunity to start some work. And, we're working with UNBC. I'll shout out UNBC, Laura Lynn, the athletic director at UNBC Athletics, because we've been working with them and trying to, to break down some barriers and reconstruct some narratives and do some really positive things. And they're working really hard. And you guys heard from Tyrell, who's a student there. Help is on its way, Tyrell. Your people are working really hard to make sure that there's an inclusive environment for everybody. So that's really what we've been doing.
And it's interesting because you guys address the systemic barriers.
Yeah, listen, they're there. I'm no longer a youth sport coach. I know some people are have to sort of hold back a little bit. But listen, my time in youth sport was so rewarding. I enjoyed the coaching piece. I enjoyed the student athletes and some great colleagues and coaches. But there were also a lot of pieces that I just did not like. I hated, in fact, that sort of, said long term, I couldn't do this, right? And I think Bowie's a lot more patient than I am with picking his battles. I felt like everyone, at some point it felt like every hill was to die on, because it's an important issue when it comes to race and issues of bias and discrimination. And I think, they need to be addressed.
I can only imagine, and I'm reading between your lines right now, yours and Bowie's, and I understand that there's probably a lot going on that you're not saying right now. So kudos to you for keeping it in. But, I feel like we all feel like that. I feel like it's sad, the fact that we have to keep these conversations almost to ourselves, because we don't want to actually say certain things because it can get back to us. It's almost a threat. But I'll shift the subject for now. But
wait, don't shift it. You just didn't ask the question, Savannah. We got to have these conversations. That's ultimately what it's about. You know, I mean, I think youth sport is in a place that they're realizing that there's work to be done. And I think they're starting to move in that direction, but there's no doubt. And I've said from the beginning, if anyone who's had a conversation with me about this, you know, we need representation. Bowie hit it on, you know, we need to provide more inclusive and safe spaces for our athletes. And that's not just for athletes of color. That's also educating all athletes, the white athletes, everybody, right? That's not just about, you know, making clubs for Black athletes, you know, and not to say that's wrong, but we also want to be mindful of compartmentalizing all these different groups and further segregating them. Like we want to be inclusive. We want to give everyone a voice and a space. And so, you know, I think that's one. The representation needs to happen also on the coaches and administrator side, which is I'm huge on, because things and decisions are made, you know, higher and higher up. And yes, that includes the university outside of the athletic department. But we certainly need to solve that. And it's not just representation as the only issue, but it's certainly a great starting point. Because when I have issue as a coach, as Bowie says, as an athlete, he comes to me, and I never coached Bowie. But who does he go to? You know, and Dr. Ivan Joseph, who will be on later, and I've had this conversation. It's like, as a coach at Ryerson, I look to him, you know, hey, you know, where do I go? So that becomes really important. It's not that, you know, if you're a white administrator, you can't understand. But I certainly know from my experiences, there were many who were not equipped for some of the issues that were presented to them that I was having to deal with.
First of all, the Black community is so small in sports, especially in basketball, of course, but in sports in general. Even when Mohammed was reading me the list of panelists, I was like, yeah, I know Crash. I went to school with her. Charles, she's seeing way too much, you know, and everybody else. But, you know, Charles, you have an interesting perspective because so for those who don't know, Charles actually coached against me for most of my playing career. So when I was like literally in high school, we used to face each other. And I remember Charles, parents and other coaches tell me, oh, that's the police officer. That's the police officer's team. And so go into that. How does that, how has being a police officer at one point in your life played into, you know, what you're doing now and like maybe the similarities and differences that you're seeing?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, it's interesting because you certainly, it's pretty visible, right? You have to deal with racism and issues of race within the police service. It's sort of unfortunately part of the deal. I wouldn't say where I worked in particular, it felt as bad. I would honestly and truthfully say, and this may shock a lot of people, that I felt more issues of race in the youth sport environment than I did as a Toronto police officer. And I know that sounds like way out there, but certainly, you know, coming to games where, you know, an official is going to say, hey, are you going to behave today? You know, before the game's even started, or, you know, comments in meetings full of other colleagues where people are saying, hey, you know what, you raise a concern and it's, you know, you'll get the respect when you get a few more years on, you know, those types of comments. So yeah, I would say, you know, it's maybe funny to some, but certainly not to me. And I would say I got a lot more of that, and what everyone has described really as a youth sport coach than I did as a Toronto police officer. I think part of it was just, you know, as a Black officer, I think a lot of times I could almost diffuse situations. If you were dealing with other Black people, they almost felt this sense of calm, some more agitated for sure, but most certainly lots of people felt it was almost, you know, it was almost this relief at times. I think when you're in the opposite environment where you're dealing with, let's say, mostly white referees, mostly white administrators, there's not that same sense. There's a sense that he's aggressive and he's, you know, angry and he's, you know, he stands up too fast and that's intimidating and all of those sort of terms that get thrown your way for wanting to stretch your legs, you know, or yell at one of your team or your players. So, you know what, I've taken a lot from policing to not only to coaching, but to this new consulting gig and to continue to coach with the Guelph Nighthawks and so on. I've taken quite a bit, and it's really been about people. It's really been about trying to understand and learn about people, because that's what to me is the ultimate solution is on both sides of, or all sides of the fence, we need to do a better job getting to know each other. We need to do a better job actually, authentically wanting to know who Savannah Hamilton is, wanting to know what Charles Kissy is about, instead of making the assumptions that he's angry or he's this or he's that. You know, as Bowie talked about, you know, being this presence, people were naturally afraid of him. I get that all the time. If I'm not smiling, people are like, why are you angry? You know, there's always something there. So we need to do a better job of that. And I think, you know, this is a great opportunity. Hey, hats off to U Sport. Mo, I know he's doing lots of work behind the scenes, but we just got to be better at it. And again, the one thing I say is, with all of this, accountability. That's the one word that I think we have to really inject harshly into the conversation. Is we need to start holding, from a youth sports level, from top to bottom, everyone accountable. Our athletic directors need to be held accountable. Our athletes obviously need to be held accountable. In most cases, they are. Our coaches, you know, and those numbers need to rise up right through to the universities and the greater bodies and presidents and administrators. I mean, you know, Brock University is probably one of the few with a Black president. I know there's many more who are qualified and capable of doing those jobs, and so we need more of it, and we need to be holding decision makers accountable to not only just hiring. And hiring, I don't know if that's the only solution, but yeah, as people say, there are 0 Black ADs. Like, you know what? To be honest, talk about that representation. I told Dr. Ivan Joseph this the other day on our podcast, which will be out this week. You should all listen to. I never thought about becoming an athletic director until him. You know, it never crossed my mind. It was not something that was, you know, a possibility. But sort of seeing him and seeing how he operated and what he did at Ryerson was the difference, was one of the major differences. Now, listen, certainly inspired by others, but when you see yourself, it allows you to see more oftentimes.
Absolutely, Kissy. And I mean, I would love to continue this conversation, and you're getting, people at home can't see the messages of support that you're getting on the side over here, but you know, we are all like feeling you right now. We're like, yeah, say it one more time louder for the people in the back, Kissy, because no, like, you're not alone. This is not a hidden feeling. I think we've all felt this to some extent. I've only been a player in the youth sports organization, but I can only imagine what it's like in different aspects and different spots and places within the administrative side. You know, it happens in the corporate world, and that's exactly why you have your business. So we're not numb to it, and we're not blind to it. And like, hey, this is the conversation where we call it out. We're calling it out. So thank you, Kissy, for sharing your truth. You know, I do have to keep it moving. I got to cut off time at 8:00. So
Thank you. And good job, U Sport. Keep it going. Keep action, action. And we'll all hold you accountable and work with you.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, shout out to U Sports for having this conversation. I know I'm not going to try to baby it or try to like make it sound like it's like, you know, this is an easy conversation. It's obviously not an easy conversation, but we need it to be. We need these types of things to be a regular occurrence. Okay, so now we have Tanisha Gittens. I'm excited to talk to her. She has hired in a particular manner of her coaching staff. I'll let her get to that. She is the head coach of the Concordia Stingers women's basketball team. Tanisha is a huge advocate on speaking out about how vital it is for Black coaches to be given important roles and positions in order to succeed. Now let's take a quick look at her piece with CBC.
I'm not advocating for just hiring Black because they're Black. You have to know what you're doing. You have to be qualified. You have to be willing to grow and learn, et cetera, et cetera. On other staffs, they might not get that opportunity, you know, because they might not have went the traditional route to get the credentials, you know what I mean, to get the opportunity to be assistant coaches or head coaches. It's a movement. I think it's everybody's movement, right? But like, it's our moment, you know, and I think it's a perfect time for Black people to lead, you know, because it is our moment. Everybody is watching, everybody is at attention, everybody wants to help. So I think it's an opportunity for Black people to kind of like use our voices, and our allies, our anti-racist allies, to amplify our voices when they can, you know, because like, again, they're in certain positions and at certain tables that we aren't. So we need our allies, we need them, you know, those people, our non-Black allies to step up, to speak out, to speak loud, and advocate for change with us. You know, so it's not Black people against racism, it's everyone against racism.
Tanisha, the floor is yours. I'm just going to sit back here and let you speak your truth. You can just go off. Go off.
That's funny. I wish I would have known you guys were going to show the video. I said, wow, I'm sitting back there watching the video. No, it's great. Thank you for having me. I love what it is that, the conversation that U Sports is allowing us to have. It's amazing. It's wonderful. I'm sitting back here in, backstage smiling at all the young, women and young men that are out here, using their voice and using their platforms and speaking out loudly and boldly and being courageous. I think it's great. And kids see Charles over there, he was speaking to my soul, so it's important. And I'm glad that we have this platform.
Okay, talk to me about, you hired your coaching staff in a particular way. Tell me about what that way was and any feedback you got.
So when I got the position back in 2015, I was allowed to obviously, hire who I wanted to hire, who I wanted to bring on with me. And of course, I had to make sure they were qualified, people that I knew that I could trust, people that would understand me, and so on and so forth. And, we are limited in Canada in terms of what we can offer our coaches and our support staff. It's nothing like the NCAA, so it really had to be people that believed in me, believed in what we were doing as a program, and also that I knew wouldn't necessarily have the opportunity to coach at this level. And so I was given the opportunity, I was blessed with the opportunity to become the head coach and make those decisions. And so for me, it was a no-brainer. I also came from, before I got to Concordia, I was at Howard University, HBCU, right? Historically Black college and university. So there was a certain, that's all I saw. You know what I mean? I saw us thriving. I saw us having opportunities. And, we can be Black, all Black. We didn't have to be the token. You saw that a lot. Coaching in the US, that's often what you heard. It was, if there was a position open, it was like, oh man, I can't apply to that position. They already got a Black guy or they already got a Black girl. And I was like, well, why can't we have, 2, 3? They can have 2, 3 white, coaches. Why can't you have the same on the other side? So for me, it was just about, I felt the responsibility to create opportunities, to give others opportunities that look like me, that wouldn't normally have those opportunities. So, that's kind of how that started and why I do it. And just I don't have everybody on my staff anymore, but that's certainly how it started. And, I do look out for that because I know some of the barriers that are in place that doesn't allow, for people, again, that look like me to have those opportunities.
Absolutely. And I'm just curious now about the feedback you would have gotten, as a Black woman. Did you ever feel a sense of like, oh man, see, we put a Black woman in charge and she goes ahead and she just hires an all Black staff? Like, did you ever feel like there's some sort of reverse racism, even though I don't believe in that, but like, yeah. Do you feel like any feedback coming that way?
Honestly, no, because if they did, they didn't say it to my face. So I didn't get any messages. I didn't have anybody say that to my face. And I mean, honestly, why? Why would you have a problem with that? Exactly. They were great basketball minds. It wasn't like I said in the video, I don't hire Black just because you Black. I'm going to hire you. You have to be qualified. You have to be able to do the job and do it at a high level. You have to want to grow, in this industry. You have to want to do those things. And if you don't, then okay, I will take the next person, whether they're Black, white, Chinese, indigenous, doesn't really matter. I just want the best people, the most qualified people to do the job. So no, I didn't get any backlash or any kind of negative feedback with that. You'd hear comments, every once in a while. I remember one time I was coaching. I'm not gonna, say who it was, obviously, but I was coaching and we're getting ready and, we go down and I usually, go down and talk to, the other coaches, just say, hey, hi, chat it up a little bit before the game. And, they take a look down at the bench and they're like, oh, you got a lot of color over there. I looked up I said, well, if I don't hire us, who will? And I won't even, put it out like that, who that was, but I'm sure a lot of people would be surprised, so for me, it's like, that's exactly why, I have to do that. Because now, because they've been in, those situations. They've been on my staff, they've coached at the university. It affords them the opportunity to possibly now go out and apply for that head position at the university level. You know what I mean? So it's just about, creating those opportunities for others, because I, again, was blessed with the opportunity to have the one that I have now.
Two things. So because of the sake of time, and I'm sorry to have to make this a little bit shorter, but for the sake of time, where have you seen your coaching staff since you've hired them? And you said a few of them have moved on. Where have you seen them succeed to? And also give me your final thoughts as well.
Some of them, they're doing great things, in the community. A lot of them are really, really, really active in the community. They're educators, they're business owners, et cetera, et cetera. It's different, again, in Canada in terms of what we can offer coaches. It's really hard if you're not a head coach to make this your career. Our assistant coaches are usually having 2-3 jobs. They're coming from, work, coming to practice, and so on and so forth. So a lot of them, it's you would love to see them grow in it and, become, head coaches or just, stay in the business. But sometimes it doesn't happen. But everyone that's been a part of my program, they've gone on to do great things, and whatever it is their aspirations or goals are, outside of the game, and some of them in the game as well too. So they've done some great things individually. They continue to do that, and the biggest thing for me is they're all very outspoken and in the community and empowering and stuff, doing those things, and that's what makes me the most proud, is that I hope that some way I've influenced them to be that, and to use their voices and to use their platforms, in the right way. And yeah, sorry, go ahead. No, you asked me my final thought. So
yeah, no, what's your final thought?
My final thought is this, with the young people, young girls and women, keep using your voice, keep using your platform, keep speaking out and telling your truth. For, young lady Tyra, she said, at the beginning, for every negative comment she has, how many, more that are positive. And hold on to that, and know that you have an army, you got troops behind you, beside you, in front of you, whatever it is and wherever it is that you need that, we got your back, and so keep doing that, keep telling your truth. And, to youth sports, it's about time, and good. And now it really is. And I'm a little different than everybody. I'm not about, to go pat backs and give them high fives, but they'll get a nod, and it's a good first step. We just got to make sure, like I said earlier when we were talking, the conversation is great, but our experience is not for your entertainment. It's not at all. We're not here to entertain you. We hope that from our experiences that it will ignite something in you to really make change, you know what I mean? And create lasting change out there. So like I said, we can keep having these conversations and having these talks and bringing light and educating people, as long as there's something on paper that's lasting and there's change that's gonna happen.
Amazing. Tanisha, I feel like I could just pull 7 quotes at least from everything you said tonight. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate it. Next up, we have Dr. Ivan Joseph. He was actually my athletic director when I was at Ryerson, so I'm happy to be speaking with him. Just to give you guys a bit of his resume. He's currently the vice president of student affairs at Wilfrid Laurier University, and was recently the vice provost of student affairs at Dalhousie University. He was previously Dr. J, the athletic director at Ryerson, as I mentioned before, and he led the Rams to a first-time national championship twice and a first-time provincial championship in several times. And I mean, I must say, not to make any flashes or anything on this side, but I mean that's one of them. Dr. Ivan Joseph, come on in, man.
Hey, how you doing, Savannah?
I'm good. We got about 6 minutes, so I'm gonna condense everything. You have a TED Talk on YouTube, so and I actually, something that has stuck out to me when you were my professor back in the day has always been, just the way you told me something. You said the way that sports commentary describes Black athletes versus white athletes. That has never left me. I think about that almost every single day in the way that I describe my athletes, in the way that I tell my colleagues to describe athletes in the media. So, thank you for that. It's literally burned in my head. And you actually called it out by using a real announcer from Ryerson who called an athlete, one of our own athletes, like something like a monster or an animal or something like that. So a beast. Yeah, I was like, I didn't think about that. Like, so crazy. So, how has your experience on this high level athletic director, and how have you seen the lack of diversity from your position across youth sports, across Ontario, or Ontario, Canadian universities?
What it's done is it's created systemic racism and discrimination, and not because of malice. It's people aren't aware of their unconscious bias. I'll give you a quick example, Savannah. I remember when I was an AD, and the U Sport decided to rename the men's hockey championship trophy, the CIAU or the CIS championship, and they named it the David Johnson Trophy after the Governor General. I remember at the time, why would we name a trophy after a man who, I know he's the Governor General, but he played his hockey in the United States. He played at, Harvard or Dartmouth, a great Ivy League school. Why didn't we take an opportunity to perhaps name a trophy after Willie O'Ree, the first Black man in Canada to play in the NHL? What a great story that would have shifted. That thought never entered the minds of the youth sport leaders and administrators. What they did was perpetuate a system where white man in power, white man leader, let us now put him up even higher and continue the narrative. And that's how systemic racism plays out when you don't have diversity at the table to call out our groupthink on things like that.
Listen, go off. Continue going off. Tell me more. Tell me more. You're in this rare chair as a Black man in a position of power. You see multiple different types of positions of power. What's it like to hold space in these chairs, in these decision-making positions?
Yeah. Recognize that I'm not angry that I'm here, and you can't hold space in these spaces as an angry Black man because you won't get anything done. You've got to figure out how to be nuanced and subtle and use your relationships and your power to make things happen. But at the same time, the research will tell you, and my experience will tell you the same, that if you are a man or a woman of color in these positions, you have to be perfect. You have to be better than perfect. And any mistake you make will be because he only got the job because he was Black. He only got the job because he was a woman, or whatever that sort of situation is. And that's hard when also the other narrative is fail fast, innovate, try it. You got to swing for the fences. So how can you innovate and be experimental and really take risks to launch whatever you're trying to do when you know you're being judged by a higher standard?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I feel that in the media. Me and Kayla Gray are the only two Black women on camera in full-time doing basketball, but also full-time sports, if you think about it. So, I feel the extra pressure, and I can only imagine what it's like as an athletic director, because your resume at Ryerson alone, like, you brought in all these championships and you turned it kind of from, I'm going to call it out, a losing program to a winning program from multiple things. You're involved yourself with the soccer program. And so, how did you do that? How did you manage the pressure of these expectations while also executing at a high level?
Well, I'll say the pressure and the expectations were never external for me because I just tuned those out. They were always my internal driven commitment to be excellent. And it was really a simple formula. I hired the best coaches. Part of that meant I had to break down the barriers. I think Coach Lee said it best when, differently prepared. When we hired Coach Rana, I didn't mix any secret ingredient. I just made sure that I did away with the requirement that said you must have CIS, U Sport qualifications, because if that's a form of a systemic barrier that's keeping Black coaches out of the league, because there's hardly any Black assistant coaches in the league. Back then in 2008, there was none. So if I didn't change that rule in that system, Coach Rana would never have got an opportunity. I took not an underqualified, I took a differently qualified coach. And that differently qualified coach went on to win our championships, our medals, and now is thriving in the NBA. But more importantly, he launched the career of Coach PT, who's now at MAC, Coach Smalls, who's now at Lethbridge, helped Coach King, who's now at Windsor. So there's 3 different Black coaches, racialized coaches in the league because we made a difference. There's no doubt that this Black athletic director led to Black basketball coaches because I made it a priority. Not everybody, I'll say, will probably take the same priority for obvious reasons.
Hey, this is exactly why we're having this conversation. And I hope anybody who's listening, who's really listening, is understanding the trickle down effect that this has. from a coaching standpoint to an athletic director and to these positions of power. Before I let you go, do you have any final words?
Yeah, for sure. There's lots of allies. So don't hear us at Youth Sports. If you're listening, anybody that's, of the majority and the white group and community saying we're all angry. We're not all angry, right? We know that we couldn't, lots of folks here have helped us get out along the way, but the work isn't done. And so those of you now who are in positions of power, how do you help keep that work going? I think that's an important message as well.
Absolutely. That's a great message. And yeah, our allies, and I talked about this within my job, like I wouldn't be even on air in the position that I am if I didn't have allies in higher food chains who are white people, who are people of white skin color to really give me the opportunities. So yes, allyship is just as important to be a part of the conversation. And so I appreciate those people as well. Thank you so much, Ivan.
My pleasure. Take care. Good to see you thriving.
Thank you. Take care. All right, we got to bring in Mohammed. I don't want to wait any longer. Mo has really invested his time into making this event happen. Why was that important for you, Mo? Oh, your audio. You're on mute. Classic.
I was behind the scenes all day, so I forgot to unmute myself. First off, I just want to thank all the guests that came to speak on behalf of Youth Sports. Honestly, like Coach T said, right? It's the start. These conversations are important. It's a good step in the right direction. We need to keep having them. We need to keep moving in the right direction. And I'm saying this on Youth Sports' behalf. We're going to keep the conversation going. We're going to take the lessons learned from this, turn them into actionable, sustainable steps to move forward in the right direction. I know we have only a couple minutes left before we wrap up, but I look at my sphere of influence, right? What I can control within my job, my daily life, my family, my friends. And this conversation was one of the ideas that came to me, right? Saying let's hear from our country. Let's hear from these great people with so much different vast experiences, right? Transcribe this, right? What are we doing with this? I don't want us to just be having this one and done event, right? But what are we going to really take out of this event to take to our equity committee as an agenda item, right? How do we take that conversation and make it into sustainable steps moving forward? Is really what I'm for. I know myself and Sharon Tomas is only two colored people in our office, right? So what does that feel like, right? I've been working in the esports world for the last 7-8 years, and I haven't seen representation. I can name all the people, right? Half of them I brought on this event today. I can name these individuals, and what I hope is 15 years from now, we see the trickle-down effect where there's much more representation in decision-making roles. I think about my daughter 20 years from now, right? I'm a young guy. 20 years from now, my daughter, I hope she doesn't, because I want her to play sports, hopefully, and I hope that her experience is not what I witnessed right today, and it's just compounded growth, and we're moving in the right direction. So I'll leave it at that, Savannah. Thank you for hosting. Thank you again for everybody to come on stage today. It was a beautiful event, and hopefully, like we said, we'll keep the conversation going and create some sustainable action, hopefully.
Yeah, just bouncing off of what Mohammed said. Thank you so much. Here's your flowers. You deserve everything awarded to you tonight, Mohammed, for having this conversation, for really pushing for this to happen. It's not a conversation that we have every day, even though it should be. It should be something that we talk about outside of Black History Month. But as Donovan said, at least we do get to really highlight these conversations in the Black. At least we do have a space here. So, thank you for the administrators behind the scenes, John Bauer and everybody else who also allowed this event, this conversation to happen as well. So, guys, and everybody who's listening at home, you are just as much as a part of the conversation as everybody who spoke on the panel today. Thank you guys for speaking your truth and having an honest conversation. I personally feel like I got a lot out of it. And so I know if the host who's trying to focus on hosting is getting a lot out of it, then I'm hoping that the viewers at home did as well. Thank you guys. That's all I have to say. All right, have a good night.
It's that moment again, the one you dream of every night. La seule chose qui te préoccupe, c'est la gloire. Le cheminement de la réussite, of pushing yourself further than ever before. But the true glory is in the shadows. Les sacrifices que tu fais, quand toutes les chances sont contre toi. When you can't push one more second, chase the glory. Visez haut.